Welcome to episode 11 of the Timbo Slice podcast featuring Jordan.
So it's been a little while because we missed our last podcast because we were busy doing stuff and whatnot. So sorry to keep you folks waiting for a month for episode 11. But here we are. I'm back in town. I just flew in from Dallas yesterday. I was out there for business. And there were tornadoes while I was there. So it was interesting. Got some Texas barbecue, ate some good food, tried to bring barbecue sauce back, which was confiscated by the TSA, keeping you guys safe, so you can sleep easy tonight knowing that there was no barbecue sauce on my flight.
What if one of the pilots got heartburn, Tim? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I know.
Have you ever tried to fly an airplane with heartburn?
I have never tried to fly a plane, period. But
you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, I guess not. What Devin told me is that when they found it and were telling me to either surrender it or check the bag, he said I should have just opened it and chugged the whole thing in front of them.
That would have shown them.
That's right. It was quite large, though. 18 ounces of barbecue sauce. I don't know if I could have done it. Probably would have gone viral if I did, though.
Yeah.
You can't have my barbecue sauce, and then I just screw off the top and drink the whole thing, and then surrender the empty bottle.
That's right. Hope you're happy.
Yeah.
It was be barfing the whole flight now.
Yeah. It was a bummer. I mean, yeah, I wanted to bring it back, and I forgot that we don't live in a free country, so I tried to bring it. Oh well, but I'm back now, and we are doing podcast episode 11. No guest this time unless Chris shows up partway through.
No barbecue sauce either. Thanks a lot, TSA.
I know. Your tax dollars at work. Anyway, so in other news, for those of you who haven't heard yet, Edward Snowden was on Joe Rogan. Did we talk about this already, Jordan?
No, we haven't. Somebody told me that he was on there. I don't know if it was YouTube or what. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was Hacker News. I think that's where I saw it, on the Y Combinator news site. There was a link there that Snowden had been on. But I didn't go to the link because I know that all of his episodes are super long, and I was at work.
Yeah, it was 3 hours, but Jordan, it was 3 hours of pure gold.
Yeah.
It was great. It was... there was so much information. So I don't know. Even Joe Rogan probably only got like a handful of words in the whole time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Snowden was just going and like topic after topic, just talking about his history, how he got to the position he was in, what made him decide to be a whistleblower, what his life has been like since. Yeah, it was great. You need to watch it.
Well, I'd like to watch it. There's so much content, so little time,
Yeah. And he apparently has a book out now called Permanent Record. And buy it now before the government censors it or bans it or whatever, because apparently they're trying to sue him and his publisher in order to silence it. So
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
was it a civil suit?
I don't know. I don't think so though, because I think the way they're going after him is by saying he's a criminal and therefore he's not allowed to make money off of sales. And then they're suing the publisher saying he's a criminal, so you can't aid him by publishing his book.
Oh, those dots don't connect for me, right? Like you're telling me that if I'm in a federal prison for whatever, right, I can't publish a book from there? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. I know that O.J. Simpson wrote a book and then he actually got sued. And lost, and so he's not allowed to make money off of it. All the money, like all the proceeds from it, go to the family of what was that guy's name?
Cato? No.
was it Ron Goldman?
Something like
Am
that.
I making that up? I don't know. But anyway,
I think his name was Ron.
yeah, his family, and I don't know if Nicole had any family or whatnot, but yeah, like all the proceeds go to them. So, yeah, and they even he wrote a book. It was called "If I Did It,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, I've seen that one on Amazon or something.
yeah, and once he lost the rights to it, the families of the victims, they changed the cover of the book so the "if" was like super tiny. So it just shows OJ's face and it says "I did it" with like a tiny "if" above it. That's funny. That's all the justice he's gonna see, though.
Yeah, that's so interesting, though. 'Cause it's like you're saying when someone is in prison, they surrender all intellectual property rights, which seems crazy to me.
Not only that, but Snowden has never been tried.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So he's technically never been found guilty of anything. He's only been charged.
Seems foolish to me for them to even try anything, right? Like I know the story of the first Air Jordans is they were banned in the NBA. Michael Jordan was fined every single game that he played them. Of course, everybody wanted them, right?
Right.
Who would not want shoes that are so good you're not allowed to play them in the National Basketball Association?
Right. Yeah, because I think up until now, so Snowden was big in the news back in like 2013, maybe even 2014.
Yeah, it's been a while. Seems like lately you just hear the odd snippet about him doing whatever in Russia.
Yeah, and while he was big in the news, the government was coming after him hard because he was big in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once he kind of dropped out of the spotlight, they kind of have left him alone. Like, has Trump said anything about Snowden? Not as far as I know. Did Obama say anything in his second term? Probably not much, right? So I think that I guess it probably was during his second term, though. Yeah, because his second term ended 2016. But anyway, but yeah, later, like, 2015, 2016, I don't think anyone was talking about him by then. And so I feel like the strategy has been to just ignore him and hope he goes away,
Yeah.
But now that he's putting a book out, I think they're getting worried again,
They don't think
the powers that be. Yeah.
He's just going to sell more books, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, Too Hot for TV is what they're making it.
Right, exactly.
This is the unrated version that we couldn't show in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want something to get attention, ban it, right?
That's right.
And everyone will want to know why it got banned. What's so crazy about it? What's so dangerous?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so controversial?
That's right.
Yep. So, yeah, I don't know what they're trying to do or what they think they're doing, but I'm going to order that book, Jordan. Heck yeah.
Yeah. It sounds so interesting, right? Bam.
Yeah.
So I haven't done the research to know if it's true or not, but I think Simon Sinek is who I heard it from, that limes or lemons, citrus on sailing vessels. No, it was sauerkraut was originally limited just to the officers because they wanted everybody to eat it. Right?
Oh.
They couldn't tell them, hey, you got to eat sauerkraut.
I think I've heard this before.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was only for the officers aboard the ship.
Yeah.
And then everybody wanted it, right?
Yeah.
So only the officers could eat sauerkraut.
Yeah. Because then it's the elitist, food, right? It's like, why are they so respected that they get to eat that? And, why is it withheld from us, the peasants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hate anything that's not equal, even if it's something like sauerkraut, which I don't care for.
It's good on hot dogs and bratwurst, yeah.
I can see that.
Or pork chops, yeah. It's not bad.
I like pickle relish on hot dogs.
It's just not great to eat straight. But I mean, neither is relish, really, right? Yeah, it's kind of like a condiment. Most condiments you wouldn't eat straight. Put them on something, fine. So I like it. So yeah.
Edward Snowden, the sauerkraut of national security.
Yeah, listen to the podcast, buy his book. I don't get anything out of you listening or buying.
And he doesn't either.
But maybe not. But yeah, my personal recommendation. So there you have it. So another thing I wanted to talk about is China.
China.
So we talked a little bit about this did we talk a little bit about it last podcast? I don't remember if it came up, but since we last spoke, there have been a number of things that happened around China. So, there's a Hong Kong protest going on.
Yeah, I've heard a tiny bit about that.
Yeah. So they're basically protesting against China. So I guess they're under some kind of system. I don't know everything about this either. They're under some kind of system where China's supposed to regain rule over Hong Kong in some distant year. Like, it's not even that soon. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but they kind of have semi-independence right now, but that has like a sunset date on it. And obviously nobody outside of China wants that to happen. The Hong Kongers don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen generally. But China does want that to happen. They want to take Hong Kong back. And I think that's what the protests are over. I'm not 100% sure. But like I said, though, I think the date where China regains control or whatever is like more than a decade in the future. So anyway, so those are going on. And Blizzard had a Hearthstone tournament. You know what Hearthstone is?
Yeah, it's a card game.
Yeah.
Do they print paper cards, or is it electronic only?
100% digital.
But you have to buy the cards, right? I mean, if you want to be competitive,
packs,
you have to.
You buy booster packs, and you can kind of earn cards by playing, but it's like extremely inefficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Magic. If you want to be serious about it, you've got to shell out some money.
Yeah, but there's no trading in this game, though. Like, at least in Magic, you could say, oh, I have this rare card that's, that doesn't work for my deck, but it works for yours, and you have the rare card that I need, so we'll just trade straight across.
Right.
In Hearthstone, they don't have trading with other players at all.
Wow.
So basically what you have to do is you like disenchant the cards you get, and you get like 100th of their value, basically. So like, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's like a 20th. But basically it's something like you have to disenchant 20 rares to get one rare that you want. So the amount like you have to grind to get cards without paying real money for them is insane. Just, like, absolutely insane. And then like Magic, every quarter they like retire an expansion and then put out a new one. So if it takes you a quarter to grind out the deck that you want, part of it, like a third of it or whatever, gets retired at the end of that quarter anyway. So like you have to be playing just so much in order to not pay money. So anyway, that was a tangent, but they had a tournament.
In China, Hong Kong?
I don't know if it was there. I think it might have been, but I don't know. But the guy who won, in his post-game interview, he won the whole tournament, post-game interview, he put on a gas mask and said, like, free Hong Kong or something. And as a result, Blizzard banned him for a year, took away his prize money, and fired the two commentators that were interviewing him.
Wow.
Right? Pretty heavy-handed, wouldn't you say?
That is some heartless capitalism, if ever there was.
So they took a lot of heat for this.
Uh-huh.
And I think they should have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
they're just siding with China because they want all those Chinese yen, right?
Yeah.
It's the only reason to do that, because the money is the most important thing to them.
So my knee-jerk reaction is Blizzard was in the wrong.
Yeah.
And they came down way too hard on this guy.
Oh, for sure.
Yet, I think there's some things worth discussing about this. So, first thing is Blizzard came out with a statement. They said that if this guy had said that after the tournament, but not like as part of the tournament, they wouldn't have cared. But the fact is, they don't allow anyone to bring politics into the game.
Oh, I don't believe that.
You don't?
Well, they have a tournament in North America, right? So it says Trump is such a horrible president. They're not going to take his prize
Probably
money
not.
and ban him, right?
Probably not, because they're probably not too worried about losing money over that, right?
Yeah, it's not that the comment was inappropriate, right? It's that it puts them in bad standing with China. And
Right.
They want all that money.
Yes. So that's another thing. Their policy does forbid it. They don't have to enforce it, right?
No.
So, like, I'm sure what they're doing is they're weighing, how bad is this for us to let that slide, right? Versus how bad is it for us if we punish them. So
Right.
if somebody says, yeah, Trump sucks, they're like, for the most part, people agree with that.
Most of our players are liberals.
Yeah. And
so it'll look better if we don't punish this
exactly.
person.
And so then they won't, right?
Yeah.
Or at most it'd slap his wrist and be like, you can't say that. If you do it again, then there'll be like a $5,000 fine.
Right. They got to publish some statement that says this was inappropriate.
Right.
Won't be tolerated in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they came down on this dude hard, I think, because they have to appease China, right?
Yeah. Lots of people there, lots of money.
And China is pretty heavy-handed, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you do something that the Chinese government doesn't like and you're in China, things are not going to go well for you, right?
Yeah, they can do whatever they want to.
You probably get disappeared. Maybe they torture your family too. Who knows, right? Like, we're talking about a government that is not subtle in its enforcement of anything, right? As far as I can tell. And so I think that in some regard, Blizzard thought about this and said, okay, if we slap this guy's wrist, China's not going to be appeased because they would probably execute this guy for saying that. So we have to come down hard enough that they're like, okay, yeah, you what's the word I'm looking for?
You suffered enough?
No, like for example, there have been times in the past where like people wanted Trump to denounce like white supremacists or other groups or whatever, and he didn't denounce them strongly enough, I guess. And people are like, oh yeah, he didn't really distance himself as much as he ought to have, right? So sometimes there are people who feel like the proper response is at a certain level, and if your response is lower than that level, they're like, yeah, you're not even you're signaling the wrong thing. You're showing that like you're not as opposed to this thing as you should be, right?
Or that you're condoning it?
Maybe even a little bit of that, right? Like you're not coming down hard enough against it. And so I think that China is the kind of country that would expect something really harsh. Because that's what they would do themselves, right?
Yeah.
So Blizzard has to weigh, okay, yeah, like we've got a lot of potential financial consequences of letting this slide. China will be mad. And so we're going to take action. And if we're going to take action, it can't be a slap on the wrist because China would be cutting this guy's hand off, right? Mm-hmm. And so we gotta lean more to that side, right? So I think there is definitely some of that going on. I can sympathize with Blizzard saying that the game itself, the tournament itself, was no place for this kind of speech. Because I think I agree with that. Like if I were a fan of Hearthstone, I don't play it or watch it, but if I were a fan and like every tournament someone was like, oh yeah, we hate white males or something, which is sadly a pretty common thing for people to say these days, it sounds like, in my experience. I'd be like, screw this, I'm not gonna watch this garbage. Like every tournament they have somebody spouting garbage about how we want fewer straight white men playing these tournaments, and we're glad that they're not here, and we're glad that they're not winning. And like, this is about the game, this is about strategy, this is about having a better deck, having more skill, having whatever, like you're just gonna alienate someone like me if you pull that garbage intersectionality crap into here. So I think that the game should be about the game so everyone can enjoy it. And Blizzard is not wrong to argue that. Do I really? But yeah, like, I think you're right in that there's room for, some skepticism here that Blizzard is really caring that much about that, versus the amount of lost Chinese revenue that they're worried about, So, so there's that whole Hearthstone thing. Around the same time, there's a South Park episode that came out called Banned in China. Banned as in BAND. So those guys are brilliant. But I recommend the episode. You should watch it, Jordan.
Oh,
great.
Right. So Make Love Not Warcraft and Banned in China.
Yes, those two. At least those two. Night of the Living Homeless is also great. Night of the Living Homeless. Oh, I love that episode too. Anyway, so Banned in China, the kids, they make a band, and then some like talent recruiter guy, I don't remember exactly what his title is. He's like, hey, I want you guys to make a bio movie about like, who you all are, how your band formed, etc. And so they go to do that, but then like every step of the way, the Chinese censors are there to say, no, we don't allow this, because they want to be able to sell that movie in China too. And they essentially end up giving up on making that biopic film, because they can't do anything that they want or say anything they want, or they can't even share their real biography, because there are things about it that China doesn't accept. So, but one of the lines that really hit me during the episode was how one of the kids says, he laments how they're growing up in a world where everything that they can watch is something that was approved by Chinese censors. Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Think about that. And so one thing I wanted to kind of talk about is the dichotomy you have when it comes to doing business in China. Because on the one hand, I think that doing business in China is the main force that moves China towards freedom. They become more globally integrated, and therefore they have to shift a little bit more towards the middle of the spectrum, away from totalitarianism, away from communism, if they want to be able to have their iPhones, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think doing business in China is what's kind of opening them up and changing things over there for the better, making them a little bit more democratic, maybe a little more free market, right? But then you also have the other side, which is, in order to be able to do business in China, you have to comply with their demands. They set the guidelines. They say, you want to do business here, you have to do A, B, C, D, E, right? And some of those things are at odds with our sense of human rights, freedom, or proper governance, right? So, for example, we might say something like, we want to sell, or we want to have Google search in China, right? Because why not? That helps them have better access to information. Except then the Chinese authorities say, well, Google search can't return any results on things like democracy, unless they're negative. They can't return any results on anything bad about China. Any criticism at all must be filtered. So Google complies with that stuff in China. And now you have to think, where's the boundary, right? How much is too much? Because I think Google being in China, like I said, helps move them more towards globalization. Maybe opens their country up a little bit more, makes things a little bit better. But Google is filtering out all the information that they need in order to realize or wake up to their situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What's your take on that, Jordan?
On Google and China?
Yeah. Censorship versus complying with censorship versus not even doing business there and maybe not even getting the ball rolling on globalizing China or opening them up to international relationships or freedom or even democracy or free markets, right? Like, I think that there's probably a line somewhere where it's like, you're doing, like, if you cross the line, you're doing more harm than good. But as long as you stay on the other side, you're probably doing more good than harm.
Yeah.
But there's probably no way where you can do only good, right?
Yep. Because you're constrained. That is a complex situation in China. And I know what I would do, but I'm not Google, right? Google and I are very different. Google is much more money-centered than I am.
Yeah. What would you do?
Me, I would just say we're not going to do business in China. And I think, so the Chinese wouldn't have our search engine, but there would be people that know the reason the Google search engine isn't here and it's in the rest of the world is because Google is about like openness and transparency and human communication, right?
Right.
And our government won't respect that, and that's why they can't come here.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're after, right? Google is not after that. They're after tracking you, right? They don't want to give you free email. They don't want to give you a free Office suite of software.
Yeah.
They want to collect all that data so they can sell advertising and other things, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, depending on what your motivations are, right? It can be a complex choice whether to go to China or not.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some businesses, so it's realistic. Like, even if your business has a purpose beyond making money is still a constraint, right? So you've got to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if the only viable path for your business is to go into China? It will die otherwise. It's a complex thing, right? Because on the one hand, there is like an inner debate at the least as to whether or not you're compromising the vision for your company, right? Like, is it more important for your company to survive and shift somewhat or compromise on its values, or to die? Right? And however many employees you have are out of work now because China was your one shot at being financially viable, and because of your mission statement, you just had to go out of business. So
yeah, definitely a complex situation, and one direction I wanted to take this is combining both of these topics that we've talked about so far: Snowden and China. And I think the way they link up is that interestingly enough, it's in a way that kind of makes a lot of this anti-China stuff a little bit hypocritical. And here's why. Companies like Google, Verizon, AT&T, the government of the United States came to them and said, you have to build in backdoors. You have to surrender private information that's illegal for you to surrender to us. Any request we give to you for any kind of information, you have to comply. And you have to comply even if that's information that you say you don't gather or don't want to gather. You need to start gathering it so that when we say, give us the IP address and the date and time when this person connected, you have to be able to provide that. And guess what? All those companies still exist because they complied. So in order for them to continue in America, they still had to go against the good of the citizens, the people, their customers. They had to violate principles. They had to do things that we would consider questionable or even immoral when it comes to human rights, privacy rights, personal freedoms. And they did take some heat back in 2013 when it came out that all this stuff was out there, with Prism and all other stuff that was exposed through whistleblowing. But that stuff still is going on, and it's odd when you think about it this way. It's odd for people to be freaking out about how Google is censoring results in China, but everyone seems to have lost interest in the fact that AT&T is still recording every text message that you've ever sent. Google is still recording every search string that you've ever entered. And those are all compiled into basically a report on you in the huge data warehouses that the NSA keeps. And I guess everyone's cool with that,
It does seem like China takes more heat for that, right?
Yeah.
And they are a little more extreme.
They are,
but there are
sure.
Similar things happening here that do get less attention.
Yeah, and the thing is China, sure, they're more extreme, but I don't live there. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting my search results filtered over there. And it's not to say I don't care about the people in China, but I mean,
yeah, you should pay
more
attention
to what's happening to you, right?
In your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? Like dumping nuclear waste anywhere is horrible.
Right. Yes.
Dumping it in your neighbor's backyard, that's even worse.
Right. And so, I don't know. It's thinking about it that way makes it harder for me to condemn what companies do in order to be able to do business in China. Because you've got the fact that they're already doing stuff like that in the United States, which nobody really seems to be talking about. You got the fact, like you said, that maybe that's the only way that they can stay afloat and put food on the table for their employees.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then you've got the fact that having something that China wants, in some ways, I'm guessing that in some ways they're making concessions too in order to be able to get those things in their country.
Yeah.
There are people wanting McDonald's hamburgers and iPhones and Xboxes. I don't know if anyone buys Xbox outside of the United States, but take that, Microsoft. But they want those things. In some regard, I'm sure they're making concessions too, which is why over the last 30 years, say, China has become much more open to the world than they were before. And so, yeah, it's hard to condemn anyone who's doing business in China because of those three things. Makes it complicated,
Yeah.
It's a tough subject, and I don't know exactly where the line is, I like to think that if I were, the head of a company, that I would be kind of like you, where you said, screw you, China, we're not doing business with you then, But I don't know. It's complicated.
Well, you definitely couldn't do that as a publicly traded company. Google has no choice but to go into China, right? Otherwise, they're going to change their board or their CEO or something. Everybody wants growth.
Yep.
Blizzard publicly traded?
It's a good question. I mean, they're owned by Activision, and I think Activision is. Mm-hmm. So I think by default, they would be considered such as well.
Yeah. Seems everyone has drunk that Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
Everyone that started anywhere, like because they're doing really great in their market. Like just the next natural step. I'm doing great in this country, then I need to go to other countries and succeed there too.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that doesn't happen everywhere, right? Like in music, for example, like your country musicians are like, well, now that I'm on the top of the country music charts, it's time for me to take rap too.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? Like
Yeah.
rap musicians. I got the top selling rap album right now. It's time to go after country. Or you could just make more rap music or similar things. I don't know.
Is that what Michael Jordan did with baseball? He started playing baseball, right?
Yeah, I don't know why.
He was like, "Yeah, I'm the greatest of all time. I'm the GOAT for basketball now. Now it's time to take baseball."
I guess the interesting thing about it is like it's kind of conforms everybody to the same mold, right? Like if people in America or China or wherever, right? Whatever country you start in, if people here want to buy it, well, then surely everybody else in the world wants to buy it too.
Mm-hmm.
Or not, right? Like Vegemite is not a big thing in the United States or Canada. I'm sure they love it in Australia, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they really like the Vegemite there. Just assume, right?
Yeah.
That if white-looking people like to eat this here, well, then they'd want to eat it elsewhere.
They can keep their Vegemite, but keep sending those Tim Tams over here, all right? Those Tim Tams are great. So,
all right.
I'm all about those.
And we're still looking for sponsors, Tim Tam.
Yeah.
If you want to come aboard and sponsor us.
Yeah.
Never had a Tim Tam. I've heard good
Wait,
things about
what?
them.
You've never had one?
Not that I'm aware. Is it a wafer, chocolate covered?
Yeah. For a while, I had like 3 to 5 boxes of Tim Tams in my office. And that overlapped with the time that you were working here. So how did that...
Why did you never offer me a Tim Tam?
I don't know, man.
A case.
I don't know. In fact, we had a team activity like 2 weeks ago, and I made Tim Tam ice cream. Just vanilla ice cream with broken up Tim Tams mixed in.
Should have invited me. I would have come.
You should have, man. We watched Galaxy Quest. You seen that movie?
Yes. Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver.
Yep.
And some others. Oh, Professor Snape. I forget his name. Allen? Is that his name?
What's his? Alan Rickman. Yeah. Hans Gruber from Die Hard.
I prefer to remember him as Professor Snape.
Yes, exactly. He was a great Snape. Yes, so we watched that movie, and I made ice cream in the kitchen with Tim Tams, and it was phenomenal.
Sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. So we're going to have Tim Tams maybe next time. Yeah. And you can do the Tim Tam Slam. Do you know what the Tim Tam Slam is?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
You bite ends off of the Tim Tam, and then you drink a hot beverage through it, like a straw, like hot chocolate. Mm-hmm. Most people use coffee. And then the hot beverage starts to melt the Tim Tam, and then before it like melts and falls out of your mouth into the coffee, you suck it up and eat it.
All right.
And it's great.
Sounds great.
It is great. It's quite the experience, and you'll have to experience it sometime soon.
Yeah.
I'll have to go grab some Tim Tams from the store.
There you go. That's a good example, too. So there certainly are some things that will be popular everywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like iPhones or whatever. But everything is not for everyone. A quick way to make something that no one likes is to make something that everyone will like, you know?
Yeah.
Seems like Nintendo was careful about that in the day, right? Like they didn't bring in the NES, SNES games. They did not port all their games to America.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the mindset of people like it here. Of course, everyone else in the world will like it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes they've made a big mistake doing that too. A lot of people would say, for example, they didn't bring Final Fantasy 2 or 3 because the numbers weren't in yet on Final Fantasy 1. And so they thought, maybe they won't do well in America. And so they released the first one, then number 2 and 3 in Japan. And then they're like, oh yeah, 1 did well. So now we've got number 4. So let's put that in America as well. let's rename it number 2 so the Americans don't know. They missed out on 2 and 3. Yeah. And then they also didn't release the sequel to Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana was actually called Seiken Densetsu 2. The first one was called Final Fantasy Legend in America, Seiken Densetsu 1. And then Seiken Densetsu 3 never made it here until now. It's actually out here now as Trials of Mana. They renamed it that. But that didn't make it. And then Tyler would be upset if I didn't mention Mother 3, which is Earthbound 2, as one of the other really popular games that never made it here and so has always been emulated and fan translated. So I haven't played that one yet, but yeah, every now and then they make a mistake because, they're not sure that it'll do well, and so they don't release it or hold off on releasing it or whatever.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense to me. How they're saying we don't think it will work, or on kind of the flip side and say, let's try this thing. Maybe it will work. Maybe it won't.
And then if it does, then we can
instead of
the
saying,
rest. Yeah.
Dang it, our products are loved in North America, so they're going to Europe.
Yeah.
We will not give up in Europe. Because if we give up in Europe, well, then we might lose in America eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to Europe and Australia and China and wherever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gone far afield now.
We have indeed. So, yeah, I don't know what the solution to China is, but my initial reaction towards Blizzard, I think, I think I need to be more lenient with them, take a step back and say, well, there are good things that come out of them doing business in China. And there's plenty of shenanigans going on with the U.S. government here anyway. So is there really all that much room for outrage? I don't know. I don't know that there is. And they also ended up walking back some of their punishments. So they reduced the dude's ban from a year to 6 months, which is good, I guess. And then they reinstated his prize money, which I think was good.
Yeah. So if it were me, like in fairness, I imagine they disclosed beforehand, right? Please no political statements.
Uh-huh.
Like it totally makes sense to him to ban him for however long, right? Like you broke the rules of the tournament, important rules.
Yeah.
So you can't come back for however long, right? But taking his prize money, it doesn't make sense, right?
Because he already won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if he was cheating, then sure, take his prize money. But if you won it, you can't take his money away because he did something wrong after the competition.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of think that the commentators should have been reinstated, but...
What were they supposed to do? So, like, did they agree with him? Is that why they were fired?
I don't know.
Or are they supposed to, like, censure him right there and say, oh, that was terrible. Blizzard totally disagrees with you. That was totally inappropriate.
I don't know. I think it's because they didn't stop him. Like, they kind of saw what he was doing because he took him, like, a minute to put on a gas mask and say stuff. And Blizzard was probably expecting them to shut it down. Or expecting them to condemn it.
Right.
They didn't.
So they're seen as complicit.
Yeah. So, but that's, I don't know, man. It's another thing that makes it complicated is in America, I think, and there are probably people out there who disagree with me on this, but I think there are legitimate reasons to even support Donald Trump. If there weren't, then why did so many people vote for him, right? How did he win? There had to be at least something legitimate. Sure, maybe he's a complete idiot. Maybe he's selfish, immature, greedy, dishonest. Who knows? Maybe that's all true. But there has to be some kind of redeeming quality. There has to be some reason why people were willing to vote for him. And we are in a mostly free country, even though you can't carry barbecue sauce in an airplane.
As long as you don't get on an airplane, it's free.
Yes. And so and I guess people could argue, oh yeah, well, we have a lot of people who are uneducated or easily manipulated or gullible or whatnot. But I think there are plenty of people who are informed and intelligent that found reason to vote for Donald Trump. And if I think you would be hard pressed to disagree with that statement, unless you're like super fanatical about your side being the only correct side or whatever. Right. But anyway, and I'm not even a Trump supporter, like I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast. I didn't vote for him. I don't really like him. I don't think he's doing that great of a job. But I think there are plenty of legitimate reasons that people could have felt justified voting for him. So, mostly free country, democratic, freedom of speech, freedom of thought. We've got a lot of that stuff still going for us, at least to some degree. And he still got almost half the vote, right?
Yep.
Now, you take China, and I would say most of the world is going to be siding against them on this, on their Hong Kong stuff.
Yeah, China's a bad guy in the news.
Right.
Human rights violations, right?
Yeah.
And the Great Wall. Those are the two things you think about when you think of China.
Yes. And so the Great Firewall and the Great Wall of China. But yeah, you take China and you're going to find most people on both sides of the political spectrum in places like America and Europe siding against China. Because this isn't just like a difference of political philosophy. This is like, it's more like freedom versus oppression or tyranny, right? And that unites a lot of people. And so in countries that are more free than China, you're going to get a lot of support from the majority of people in those countries for Hong Kong and against China. And so that makes it a little bit more, what's the word? One-sided, I guess you might say. Like, this isn't about two people with differing values disagreeing in a free country. This is like people in free countries watching another country trying to be free and rooting for them, And so that makes it more complicated too, because if somebody were to say Donald Trump sucks after a Hearthstone tournament, there's not, and let's say you agree with that or disagree with that, regardless, there's not a lot riding on that, it's just somebody's opinion. It's just your opinion, but a lot of people around the world have been watching the Hong Kong stuff go down. And a lot of people are feeling like, what can I do to help them? The countries, America, England, Canada, Japan, nobody's really doing anything as a country to step in and help them. But most everybody in these countries wants to see them succeed, right? And so a lot of people are thinking, what can I as an individual do to help the cause? And then some guy on this tournament says, yeah, free Hong Kong. I think you have a much harder time condemning that kind of a statement under the circumstances. Yeah. Whereas if somebody says Trump sucks, you could be like, bro, like, even if you agree, you'd be like, bro, don't say that, like, this isn't the place for that. But you don't need to say Trump sucks in the Hearthstone tournament, because you can say Trump sucks anywhere. You can go post on Facebook. You can go on TV and say it, like.
There's lots of platforms.
Yes, lots of platforms. There's no shortage of people saying Trump sucks either. And I don't think anybody's really sitting at home feeling like, man, what can I do to get the word out that Trump sucks? You know what I mean?
Yeah. If only everybody knew.
Yeah, if only everybody knew. Yes, if only everybody knew Trump sucks, right? But yeah, I think people are really feeling the itch for like, what can we do to support our homies in Hong Kong in their quest for freedom. So being a commentator at that Hearthstone tournament and somebody says free Hong Kong, like I think there's a really big temptation there to not condemn that kind of a statement or even support it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is like, it's almost like that's your moment. That's your moment to do something, to show solidarity, to give them support.
Yeah.
And are you going to throw that moment away to keep your job? And not everybody would. So, I mean, it'd be foolish to throw your job away to agree with somebody saying that Trump sucks. Because that's such a trivial thing for us to be able to say and express.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, we've talked a lot about China and freedom of speech and capitalism and whatnot.
We sure have. A real nuanced exploration.
Yeah.
You better wrap it up.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to get to before we do?
No, nothing that would be nearly as meaningful as what we've just covered.
Right on. So, oh yeah, I went with one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
I went with Kenneth David Boo.
Yeah.
Last night to another comedy show.
Downtown?
Yep, it was Adam Carolla. Do you know who that is?
Yes. Gay comedian?
No, he's not gay.
Oh, wait. Loveline? Is that
yes.
the guy? Okay.
That is the guy.
Yeah.
You know what Loveline is?
I saw it was on in the 90s.
Yeah.
While I was a teenager. It was on MTV. Of course I watched it.
Okay. Right on. I didn't know that it was well known outside of California, just because Adam Carolla was mostly involved with K-Rock during that time period.
He was on Dancing with the Stars recently, which I don't watch,
he was, huh?
but I have old relatives and old people watch that show.
Yeah. So he was on Loveline with Dr. Drew. Because I think it started out only as a radio show on K-Rock, and then they brought it to MTV. And then he did the Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel. I didn't watch that either, but he was really good though. It was largely improvised. They had people like write words on ping pong balls, and they did like the whole like bingo style selector. And they'd pull out a ping pong ball and then read the word to him, and then he would just talk about that word and like crack jokes and stuff. So it was heavily unscripted, and he was still very good, very entertaining.
Nice. Well done, Adam Carolla.
Yeah. And another interesting fact about him is that he started podcasting before Joe Rogan and actually has a bigger following than him. So he's the number one podcaster in the world as far as I know.
Wow.
And then Joe Rogan's behind him. So
well, I never knew. Has he interviewed Edward Snowden?
I don't think he has. So
is he more lighthearted?
I have never.
Joe Rogan's super serious. It seems like he tries to be more like thoughtful.
Yeah, I have never listened to Adam Carolla's podcast, so maybe I need to repent and start. I just can't.
It's a sin not to listen.
Yeah, I can't keep up with all these podcasts. I've been listening to Jocko's more lately. Jocko's is just phenomenal, so good. Yeah. Jocko's is generally more meaningful and educational than Joe Rogan's, whereas Joe Rogan's is generally more entertaining and like grab bag-ish, like you get all sorts of people. Mm-hmm. Whereas Jocko's people tend to be military or leadership oriented. And so, and then, I have no idea what Adam Carolla's are like, but he was good. He had some good jokes. he really slammed the whole like progressive woke movement, which was great. Chappelle came under some heat for doing that as well, but yeah, he told some good jokes, and he also mentioned that he was a libertarian during the show. I mean, Kenneth Boo were like, yeah. So, but yeah, it was great. Like, I don't think I laughed as much as I did for Rogan and Chappelle, but like we were in a small room with him with probably only like 80 people, so it was much more of an intimate setting. You know, I was sitting only like.
Why was it so small?
I guess the wise guys style. Yeah, it was
that a wise guys?
Yeah. I guess their style is just to be like just a small room.
Yeah. There's one in Provo, isn't there?
I don't know.
It seemed like a smaller thing in my mind there. I've never been to one.
Yeah.
Just that's what it is.
That was my first time, but yeah, it's a small room, probably like 100 people in there tops, I would guess.
Every seat filled?
Maybe. It was pretty packed, so probably. Might have been a little bit more than 100 because there were some like expansion areas for more seating, but yeah, so I was only like 20 feet away from him probably, and I think the feel of it was different too, because I think he interacted a little bit more with the audience, because when I went to see Chappelle, it was like thousands of people, like huge, right? And that's just a different dynamic than when you're in a small room with like 100 people. So yeah, I think it was a little bit more intimate and interactive, and because it was more improv, it was kind of like listening to like a funny friend talk about different subjects rather than like getting a show of like scripted jokes or scripted bits, So, but he was really good, funny, and was able to tell funny stories about every subject that came up. So I recommend, I guess, going to his show, but I guess it's over now, so too late. You missed it.
Next time Adam Carolla comes in town.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I went to go see it. And this time they didn't have any like metal detectors or anything, so I could just walk right in, Jordan.
All right.
Walk right in carrying.
Good job, wise guys.
Yeah, thank you, wise guys. So anyway, I guess that's all for episode 11.
Sure is.
And I will try harder to get somebody lined up for next time as a guest. But we didn't really need one, Jordan.
No.
We got this covered.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to talk to new people,
Sure.
Have different topics and whatnot. So, yeah. But since I was traveling all week, I didn't really contact anybody until I got back last night, and I wasn't able to set up a guest. So, but yeah, episode 12, good chance that we're going to have one next time. So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, right to the sweepstakes. It could be you.
And maybe Jordan Wilkin will take a Tim Tam Slam live on the podcast.
Maybe I will.
Maybe. Anyway, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.